Hi everybody, welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas. I'm Jim, thanks for joining me. I just finished reading The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan with watercolor illustrations by William Blake. This is a Heritage Press edition, and I want to give you a quick reaction video, just some thoughts, impressions I got from this book. But before we do that, let's do a little book tour of this nice fine edition by Heritage Press. So here is the Heritage Press edition of The Pilgrim's Progress. I got this for $15 at a used bookshop. It is a bit water damaged. It has some mustiness to it, but it's not awful. And despite the flaws, the staining, it looks pretty good. Here's our title page and our first watercolor by Blake. This was published in 1942, so for a 1942 edition, this has held up very nicely. It comes with the slipcase here, and it also comes with the sandglass insert. You can see some of the damage that occurred at the bottom there, but this gives you some nice details. As far as just the book design, this is the book was designed by Stefan Salter. The text was composed in 14-point Caslin old-face type on paper especially made for the book. The illustrations by Blake have been reproduced with the permission of the Marquess of Crewe. And just to give you a little bit more detail about the history here, there was a limited editions book club version of The Pilgrim's Progress that came out, I think, in 1939, and it reproduced 29 watercolors by William Blake for this book, and the limited editions were truly limited editions, so only 1,500 copies were made. And I don't know what those are priced on the used market today, but they probably go for a pretty penny. And what happened here is they issued for $5 per copy back in the day. That's 1940 pricing. They reissued The Pilgrim's Progress with the watercolors by Blake. But in this case, I think they only used of the 29 original watercolor plates, they reproduced, I think, 12 of them. So you don't get as many. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. So you get 12 out of the 29. So you don't get as many of the illustrations as you do for the limited editions club edition. But still, they look great. And I want to walk through you some of these illustrations and just show you what this looks like. Here's an introduction by John Bunyan. And you can see the Caslin typeface shows really nicely, the 14-point type. The book opens with some verse by the author, his apology for the book. And here are the illustrations. So those of you who are thinking about acquiring this Heritage Press title, here's what the illustrations look like. Here's Christian reading in his book. This, by the way, was some ephemera that came in with it. I like to read these and try to read them like hieroglyphics. 21. As sure as the Lord made little apples. 31. Down you go. Dumont, Chicago, Illinois. If anyone can interpret that, let me know what you think that's all about. That was from the previous owner. Here's our next illustration, Christian pursued by obstinate and pliable. So this is an allegory, so the characters have names that symbolize what they represent. Christian is the protagonist. And he leaves the city of destruction in search of Zion. Christian in the Slough of Despond. Don't these watercolors look nice? Blake did not publish these in his lifetime, but he did these illustrations. I guess they never made it into an actual book. So this was all posthumous. Let's find our next illustration here. Christian directed by Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Christian fears the fire from the mountain. Blake had such a vivid imagination. This book was tailor-made for a mind like his. Christian knocks at the wicket gate. Christian before the cross. Christian in the arbor. I really like those rainbow hues and just the texture and the muscle design and everything. Very cool. You can see it's a prose allegory with little snippets of verse. Christian passes the lions. This is one of my favorite illustrations. Christian and hopeful escape from Doubting Castle. Christian and hopeful at the gates of heaven. And here is John Bunyan, Dreams a Dream. The whole book is a dream allegory. So that's a look at the Pilgrim's Progress. I hope you enjoyed that little book tour. So here's just some quick reactions to The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. I was late to come to this book. I made one attempt to read it before. I had a hardcover edition. I remember the cover was orange. I think it was one of those international classics library or something. Those don't hold up too well. But I made like a little headway into it and then gave up on it. As I've said in a previous video, my mother recommended this book to me. She had a Penguin Classics edition, and she was not a reader of classic fiction so much, but she was religious and she liked the religious allegory, and she recommended it. And I don't know what happened to that Penguin Classics copy. It may still be around the house. I might have fallen through the cracks along the way. But recently I got this Heritage Press edition and I couldn't resist it. I was in a book buying mood, so I thought, let's go for it. Let's give it a shot. I really like the Blake illustrations. So I read it through. I got through it faster than I thought I would get through it. I do have a bit more patience for allegory than I used to. And I think one reason why I avoided this book was probably because of the religious content. It's, I generally stay away from like heavily didactic religious literature. Never say never, but it's not quite my cup of tea. And even the works of someone like Flannery O'Connor, who was a devout Catholic, sometimes her short stories, I think, are way overloaded with like the religious message she's trying to get across, and it somehow compromises like the literary value. Although she's an awesome short story writer, I don't want to slag her too much, but it comes on pretty strong in someone like that. It comes on strong in someone like John Bunyan or in John Milton. Although Paradise Lost is an incredible work, which I think goes above and beyond the Christian message of it. But this, I think I underestimated the Pilgrim's Progress, because I always sort of assumed that it was just about the allegory. It was just here's how to be a good Christian on your pilgrimage to the celestial city from the city of destruction, and you go through all these places. And it is all that. And there's a lot of instruction, there's some sermonizing in there, there's a lot of dogmatism, there's didactic content, to be sure. As characters take little breaks on their journey, they have like some dialogues and they get into some interesting conversations. So this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But having said that, after giving him a chance, I've started to fall under the spell of the Pilgrim's Progress. Here's just some general impressions of it. John Bunyan was, I get the sense that this was like, it reads like a psychedelic trip. Like he's so full of his devout religion and he's very intense. He dreams this whole thing up. And it's like a magical mystery tour through this religious symbolism, and it is truly bizarre, and I mean that as a compliment. This is kind of a weird, funky place that he goes through. It's also very personalized. Apparently, like the place names and the landscape and so forth bear some resemblance to like his home turf. And he's very intense, this narrator, he's dreaming it all. It's like a fever dream or a psychedelic trip. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating because what that leads to then is something more than just symbolism, more than just allegory. There's story here. There's characterization. These allegorical figures are not simply mouthpieces. Like most of the time, they have character, they have personality. They say and do things that reflect what they symbolize, but there's a sort of a uniqueness to them that holds my interest. Like it has literary value, is what I'm saying. Also, it's a story, so it's a quest journey. It falls into that archetypal pattern. The pilgrimage, and it's an adventure story, and sometimes it reads like trippy psychedelia almost, like you don't quite know what's going to come next. It's just when you think you've got it figured out, some new wrinkle comes along. But parts of the book also read like comic book adventure with superheroes and villains. When Christian takes on what's his name, Apollyon or something, one of these like monster figures, it just could be straight out of a superhero adventure or a comic book. It would be great to look at a graphic novel version of this. I think it would play very well for that genre. So I was surprised at how well paced the story was, at how it held my interest. I didn't always, know what to expect, and then you would come across something that would be like this interesting new scene. If one comes to mind would be as they enter Vanity Fair. I guess this is where we get the whole notion of Vanity Fair from, and just fascinating. And they go off and they get lost and they wander and they make mistakes, and they rectify themselves, and it's really fun to follow along. So you don't have to be religious, you don't have to be a Christian to get something out of this book, is what I'm trying to say. It's got literary value. I shouldn't have wondered about that because the book was pretty much an immediate bestseller, was read by many famous writers and appreciated by them. People like Hawthorne, people like Coleridge, and Blake. And it has had enduring value. It's like a very, very popular book, which tells you something, that it's a good story. And if you want to go in the religious interpretation direction, there's so much to chew on here too, so much to think about, which is why I actually think I will probably reread this someday, reread it more for the ideas and less for the story. There's that layer too. So yes, you have to have a taste for allegory. Yes, you have to have a tolerance for religious content, that's no doubt. But this is just a fun quest narrative. It's a fun adventure story, and I give it a thumbs up. I recommend it. I think it's worth, if you know what you're getting into, I think The Pilgrim's Progress is worth reading and worth studying. I'd like to know more about the book. I'd like to know more about John Bunyan. Apparently he wrote 1 or 2 sequels to this. Those will be interesting to study down the line. But yeah, what a trippy, weird book this is. It's just I can't even. You just have to try it on for size and see. You'll see it's like a real mashup of things, and it is. There's something pleasurable about reading allegory. I mean, allegory has been a popular genre. It was super popular in the Middle Ages, but it continued to be popular in the Renaissance and even into the early modern period, maybe less so these days. But I think there's an allegorical dimension even to some of our, blockbuster Hollywood films and those kinds of stories too. So it never quite has gone away. And there's a reason why it's popular. So yeah, try it out, The Pilgrim's Progress. This one's for you, Mom. I finally got around to reading it. Let me know if you've read The Pilgrim's Progress, what your thoughts are of it. Thumbs up, thumbs down, any kind of things you gleaned from it, ideas that you find interesting about it. Just even like comments on the narrative style, the literary qualities of the work. I'd love to get some conversation going about this book. That's The Pilgrim's Progress. Thanks for watching. Hope you come back soon. Bye.